Good morning. It's my pleasure to welcome everybody here this morning for our latest installment of our Inspired Leaders series. We started this several years ago as a way to bring professionals into the college who have achieved great things in their careers in order to inspire our students to kind of give you a different perspective, to show you what's possible if you study hard and you work hard and you apply yourself. And sometimes those inspired leader speaker folks are not our graduates, so it's always good when we bring in our own so that they can show you what's possible when they sat in the same seats that you sat. Well, technically not the same, because we were in Green Hall back then, but took the same courses, studied under some of the same faculty, and to see what's possible. So we're very pleased to have Thanh Roettele with us today. He is a 1994 graduate with a degree in finance from the College of Business here at USM, and is a managing director with JP Morgan Chase in Houston. And today the format is we're going to have kind of like an interview style. I'm going to ask him questions and he's going to respond, and then towards the end there will be time where we'll open it up for a Q&A session, and so start thinking of really good questions you can ask once we get to that point. So, well, with that, Thanh, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and how you ended up here at Southern Miss.
First of all, I'm surprised there are so many people in this room. I kind of expected only 2 or 3 people. When he said, you're going to be speaking here, I guess they're giving you guys beer to come. Is there beer afterwards or something? But thank you for showing up, and it's an honor to be here. 28 years. It's been 28 years since I've been on campus, and when I left 28 years ago, I thought, one, I would never be, sitting on a stage with my picture. I think that's the largest I've ever seen my picture. And then I met Brett 4 or 5 months ago. I sent him an email after. I'm like, I never thought I'd ever have dinner, or the dean of the college would want to have dinner with me. I was such a bad student. So things turn out differently. I grew up, I'm an immigrant from Vietnam. We fled Vietnam in April 30th, 1975. I was 3 years old. My mom evacuated us off a helicopter to an aircraft carrier that took us to a refugee camp. So we eventually landed, circuitously, we landed in Patrician, Mississippi. And I'd played tennis down there. My parents have owned a restaurant now 38 years. And graduated high school, wasn't going to college, thought I was just gonna work in the restaurant the rest of my life. And then I realized my friends were all going to college and I was gonna be there the rest of my life. So I decided to go to college, and I went to Belhaven to play tennis for a couple of years, and then my father got sick and I transferred to USM. Was not a very good student, got to school, drank a little too much beer, never went to class, maybe had a 2.5 GPA when I got here. And it all kind of changed at this place for me. Brett knows this story, but I'll tell it again. It all changed in one moment in a room very similar to this. It was the big room in Green Hall, and it was just a normal day. We were in a marking class. We'd just taken a test, and the professor, and his name's Dr. Daniels, one of 2 professors I remember, by the way. I don't remember many of my teachers. And he goes to the class. He goes, there are 2 people in this class that get to leave today. And we're all looking, okay. He goes, one person is leaving because he made an 8 or a 9. And like, that person has failed. So they can leave. And then the other person can leave because they made a 98. So then I'm like, okay, not thinking anything of it. And then Dr. Daniel says, Thanhs Roettele, and I'm like, oh shoot, I made a 9. I'm like, holy cow! I knew I did better than 9. And he goes, you can leave. You made the 98. And I was like, what? And I was like, you made the 98. I'm like, holy crap! How's that possible? So I left, and then a light bulb went off, and it was like, hey, it's not that hard. I remember going to the bar, coming home, waking up at 7, reading the bold text and the highlighted stuff, and then going to take the test like I always do. Normally I don't make 98, I make 70s and 80s, and then I'm like, this isn't that hard. And from that moment on, I was like, okay, maybe if I just spend a couple hours before I go to the bar, and a couple hours after I go to the bar, things will be better. But then I realized I could make A's. And then from that moment, my entire career changed. And then I have another professor, Dr. Sackley, who took an interest in me, and he was a finance professor. And I think Kim, we were talking at dinner last night. Like at the time, half of the people failed finance. I don't know why, but I got an A in finance, and we just became friends. And he took an interest in me, and helped shepherd me. And I remember going to the College of Business annual awards and watching these people get like the Outstanding Finance Award. And I was a junior, and I turned to myself and I'm like, I can win that next year. And lo and behold, a year later, I won that award. And I don't know what happened. I'm telling you, I was a really bad student, not going to college, went to college, did really bad, had a lot of fun, came here, and then something just changed. It just all changed. And then from that, getting good grades in my major, because I had to do my resume, like, here's my overall GPA, it doesn't look so good, but here it is in just my business, and it's like 3.7, 3.8, and the overall is like 3 because I couldn't overcome the mistakes I'd made the first 2 years. But I got a job with the Federal Reserve because they came on campus and recruited. And funnily, I think I only got the job because I'd played tennis, because the then branch manager played in a big tennis league, and in the interview, all he asked me was like, can you play tennis? And I'm like, yeah, I can play tennis. He's like, can you really play tennis? I'm like, yeah, I can really play tennis. And then I got the job, got there. The first day I'm sitting in my cubicle, and he walks up and he goes, tennis Thursday. And I'm like, what? So it's a confluence of things that, like, I don't know. I think it was innate in me to be competitive and to work because I saw my mom work. I just got to school and was lazy, and it took really one moment, one eureka moment, and one professor to take an interest in me, and it changed the entire course of my life. And from there, I realized the Federal Reserve was not for me. I moved to Houston. I got a job at JP Morgan Chase. 26 years later, I'm a managing director. I manage a $25 billion balance sheet. We generated about $400 million of revenue last year. I have 65 people who work for me, and it's been one of the funnest things I've ever done in my life. And I think about coming back here. This is truly an honor. I mean, no way would I ever imagine that I would be sitting in front of you guys telling you about my career, because I thought I'd be flipping burgers at my mom's restaurant. But my mom still owns the restaurant, but life is strange. It's just a confluence of factors and people who really can change your direction. So I don't know if that answered the question.
That was perfect. So just to kind of dovetail on the comment that you made, you made a reference to, possibly being in your mom's restaurant flipping burgers. I mean, when you came to college, what was your career aspiration at that time, or did you have one?
I had no career aspirations when I got to college. I was just not going to be at the restaurant. It's weird. I was like, when I left Pastor Shan, I'm never going back. And so college was an avenue to never go back. And now all I want to do is go back. I want to retire there. It's strange. But I'm an immigrant. You know, I didn't grow up in an environment where I had role models. My idea of a banker, you'd walk into a branch, there's a teller, and then there's an old guy sitting in the office up front. I thought that was banking, and that's the only thing in banking. So I had no idea that there's a job in the world that we financed 1 in 12 mortgages in the U.S., and the mortgage market was $4.1 trillion last year. $4.1 trillion. It's the largest secondary market on the planet. Autos, the second largest, is only $250 billion. So I had no idea that there was a guy like me managing a business helping to finance mortgages. None of that ever computed. So I got here, I didn't know what the job looked like, but I got in a place, JP Morgan, that has tremendous amounts of opportunity. You work hard, you find mentors, and I'll talk about that later, but you try to pick and choose where you're gonna go and how you're gonna get there and navigate your career. There's a job out there that you can't envision or see. You know, right now, I'm sure there are banks coming in and telling you what they do, accounting firms, but there are roles and jobs that I didn't have the benefit of knowledge. My kids do. I can help steer them, their careers, and help steer them in college. And but you guys have made the first choice, which is come to school. You made the second choice, come to class, come listen. I mean, when my son went to college, I told him one thing: I don't care what you do. You can drink all the beer you want to drink. Just go to class. That's more than half the battle. Just go to class. Be present. And there are so many jobs out there. You can't even fathom. My neighbor, a tangent. My neighbor is the preeminent opera coach on the planet. I had no idea. And you Google him, we Googled him, like Placido Domingo, all these singers, they fly in to see him. Who knew that a guy could have $1 million home and he's an opera coach? I had no idea. So that's my point. It's hard to see at this age, but get a degree, find that first job, work hard, and then figure out from there, because what you are today, what you'll be in 5 years, what you'll be 5 years after that is completely different. And that's the good part about life, is you just don't know which direction it's going to take you. I mean, I've been at JP Morgan 26 years. I'll probably finish at JP Morgan in 10 years, at 36 years, but who knows? I may take a new job tomorrow and reinvent myself. I don't know. But it's definitely a journey.
So kind of coming back to the comment about your first job, and you said kind of got the job more because you played tennis, and at some point you figured out working at the Fed was not what you wanted to do.
Right.
But the first job is, I think we maybe place too much emphasis on the first job and what it is and what. So could you talk a little bit about what you got out of that first job that prepared you for the next step, and maybe some advice for students as they're entering the workforce, and what that first job should do for them.
Yeah. So are y'all millennial, or is it a different?
Most
this is
probably
millennial. So one thing, I might be the last person to spend 26 or 30 years anywhere. Everybody younger and has had 4 or 5 jobs. Most of my friends have had 4 or 5 jobs. Most of the undergrads we hire, they're gone in 2 years, 4 years. But what the important part was, the first job got me the second job. I would have never got the second job at JP Morgan if it wasn't for the fact that I had the first job. Because finding a job when you have a job is always a lot easier than not, because you have choices. But I took a very, just like most of my life, an untraveled path to where I am. Most people who have my job, we hire you as an undergrad, you internship between your junior, senior year, we give you a job, you come in as an analyst, you work your way up as associate, and then you work your way eventually to client manager and managing director. For me, I got to the Fed, and the Fed was not what I thought banking was. I was actually put on the night shift processing checks. So one of the big functions of the Fed is to process cash and checks. And I was managing a bunch of 40, 50-year-old night shift employees in New Orleans, and people who work night shift in New Orleans are a very different breed. And this is like, I'm 22 years old and I'm supposed to like tell you can't do that in the bathroom, and you're 40 years old. It's just real, it just was not what I envisioned the place was or work. But from that, I was managing a check processing team, and I got a job in Houston at JP Morgan on a project team upgrading their check processing. So I got there, so I would have never got that job. I got there and I'm like, I gotta get out of this operational role, this technology operational role. And I looked up and I'm like, that's the job I want. And so how do I get that job? Well, I posted for another job. That got me one step closer to that job. So I went from being an operations tech person to a financial analyst. So something a little closer, and I did budgets and budget reporting. And then my manager at the time, and this is where I talk about you have to find mentors, just like I had a professor here who was a mentor. You have to find mentors. This person's like, Thanhs, if you ever want to make money in life, and especially in a bank, you have to get closer to the clients. Those people are the ones who make money. The ones who bring in clients and generate revenue is where you make money. So she helped me find a role that was client-facing. And her name was Beverly McCaskill, and I owe my entire banking career to that one move. And I joined this mortgage finance team as an associate because they had just lost $100 million in a bad loan, and nobody wanted to join the group. No young people wanted to join the group. So they were stuck. They're like, we can hire Thanhs. He has none of the background we were looking for, but he's a young person, so they hired me. And 13 years later, I'm running the group. So it's about, like, when I talk about managing your career, when I went to the Fed, when I went to college, I had no idea what I was going to do. Then I get to end of college, I found a job. I was lucky, fortunate to have a job, get a job. I didn't like what I was doing there. But then I said, I got to go somewhere else, and I used that job to get me a role at a place that was bigger and had opportunity. And from there, I looked to say, wow, what do I want to do? How do I get there? But I had somebody who took an interest in me again and helped me take that next step that launched me into the career that I've had, that I've been in this business for now 22 years. So one job, there's always something to learn from a job. It could be good, it could be bad. Through the years, I've had good managers, I've had bad managers, and the bad managers I've learned a lot more from on what not to do than the good ones. So everything is a learning experience. I like to view myself, I've been at the bank 26 years, I've had 5 different jobs at the bank, but I've been doing the same business for 22 years now. So I couldn't have gotten my job today if it wasn't for the year I spent at the Fed. Yeah.
Thank you. What, during this 22-year, period of time at JP Morgan Chase, what would you say you're most proud of? What do you enjoy the most about your time there, and what makes you happy to get up in the morning and go to work?
So what makes me most proud is the people I've hired that went on to take over leadership roles in other parts of the bank, and or left and gone to be successful somewhere else. So that's the thing I'm most proud of. The thing I love most about my job is meeting new people. I manage a business that is national, so I meet somebody new almost every week. I like that social interaction. COVID really put a damper on that, and it was probably the toughest year I ever had, was that sit in Houston and home for a year. My wife was probably tired of me and ready to put me back on the road too. But it's meeting people and getting out there. I've visited nearly every major city in America, not like I got to sightsee, but I've got a flavor for every city, and just people are interested. We met all types of people, crazy people, just people that just think very differently, regionally very different, people in the Midwest versus the New England states versus Florida. It's just, I've had the opportunity to see this entire country at this job and meet a bunch of people that now I call friends. That's one, the people is the most rewarding. I have 60 people in this business. 10 of them really are my salespeople and report directly to me. That's what I enjoy most. They're family. I spend 80% of my time with my employees or my associates, because we go on the road. Like last week, I left on a Sunday, came back on Thursday, and I was with 4 of them the whole time. So I just spend more time with my coworkers than I do my family, unfortunately. But they're family, and over time they need to grow and they move on, and we're still family.
Last night at dinner, you were talking about your travel schedule, which just kind of boggled my mind. Would you share with them kind of what your week looks like or your month looks like a lot of times?
So, well, first of all, I typically don't know what my week or month looks like. I've flown close to 1.8 million miles on United. Over the course of the last 22 years, I've gone to the airport every week. 1.8 million miles, all domestically. So the most I could get in a trip is like 3,500 miles. Most of the time I get 1,000 or 2,000. So divide 2,000 into 1.8 million. That tells you how many trips I've taken. It gets old, but there's perks to that. Last week we took 20 of our clients to Salt Lake City to go skiing. We left Sunday, got there Thursday. We had Bernie Williams, the ex-Yankee, won 4 World Series rings. He was a speaker, very similar to this. I set up and I interviewed Bernie, and by the way, Bernie is one of the nicest human beings you've ever met for somebody who has 4 World Series rings. This week I'm talking in front of you, which is totally different than what my normal job is. And next Monday I fly to San Diego for a conference, and we have dinner with 20 more clients. So, and the week after that, spring break. So it's just, I can barely keep up. I don't remember where I am typically. A lot of times I wake up in a hotel and I'm like, where the hell am I? And then I'm like, oh yeah, I'm in Hattiesburg. So I do that a lot. Or I'll wake up and reach over and I'm like, oh, Rob, my wife's Robin, where are you? And I'm like, realize that I'm not at home. So it does get old, but there are perks to traveling. I'm a million miler, so I get all kind of benefits. They take care of me. Whenever there's problems, they'll get me home. So
I think you said the first birthday greeting you get every year is from your pilot.
Yeah. So typically, the first person to wish me happy birthday is the pilot on the plane. Every time, and I'm always traveling on my birthday, but the pilot will come back and say, "Happy birthday, Mr. Roettele. Thanks for being a customer." And kind of sucks that that's the first person to tell you happy birthday. But it is what it is, And I love the airport here, by the way. Love the airport here. It's by far the smallest airport I've ever been to. And you can't get an Uber, and there's no rental car there. I learned that the hard way.
In terms of leadership, I mean, you mentioned the number of people that report to you and the enjoyment you get from helping people to develop. I mean, what do you think are the most important characteristics of a good leader, a successful leader, from your perspective?
I appreciate that. I'll change that a little bit with, I have these 10 people work for me. They have degrees from big schools, Ivy League schools. Half of them have MBAs, smattering. I like to say, I'm the dumbest person on the team. I, by a mile, have the lowest GPA. I mean, we don't hire anybody who has less than a 3.6, and most of them are stupidly like 3.98s, and they made 1 B in gym or something. I don't know, gym's a class, but you know what I mean. But so when they look at, when we go to hire, they look at resumes, they look for schools, they look for pedigree, they look for that. When I hire, I'm not looking for those things. I'm looking for the person that worked in college. I told JT and them, I won't hire anybody who hasn't worked retail or in a restaurant, because you don't know how to deal with people. You learn how to deal with people working in a restaurant, working front of the house, working at the Gap or wherever. Those are the people who can relate and understand. I had a boss one time, and he was an older gentleman at the time. He was like 68, fun guy. Been my boss for like 4 or 5 years, and we're in his office, and he said, "Tom, where'd you learn your customer service skills?" I told him I learned them selling $1.68 burgers to toothless people in Mississippi. And I'm like, if you can satisfy that guy over his $1.50 burger, I can satisfy this coddled billionaire that I'm dealing with. And there's truth to that. It doesn't matter if you're buying a $1.50 burger or a $150 million jet. Everybody wants service, and you got to treat everybody the same. And we have big clients, we have little clients, and we treat them all the same. But so I'm looking for that as a leadership quality, because people understand how to deal with people if you've done that. A lot of people, when they hire, they look at your qualifications. Are you qualified for the job? Where'd you go to school? I start with attitude. Bottom line, attitude. Well, I assume you're smart already. You're here, you went to school, you got good grades, you're smart. Well, that's kind of table stakes. You have to have some level of intelligence. But for me, all that other stuff, pedigree, clubs and all that, and I'm captain of the debate and all this stuff. I want somebody who has a great attitude, will work hard, because I can teach anybody with a great attitude and works hard. You can be the smartest person, have the a great resume, but if you got a crappy attitude and you don't want to listen and you don't want to learn, you don't want feedback, I don't want you in my shop. So it's kind of weird. It takes a village. We all have diversified opinions because of how we grew up. I give the underdog a chance, the person who's trying to pull themselves up from their bootstraps. Others are looking, you hire in your own image. Others are hiring people who did what they did. They went and got an undergrad, they got a graduate degree, they did this, they did all these internships. So they're trying to hire themselves, and I'm trying to hire mine. And then we get together and we talk about it, And it's all about attitude and work ethic. Everything is boils down to, do you want to outwork the next person? And I can honestly tell you, I outworked everybody that ever sat next to me, and I had a great attitude. I was willing to this day, my boss is out in Deer Valley. I call him like, "You want me to get you a coffee? I'm headed down." I don't have a problem carrying his bag or getting his coffee. He wouldn't let me do it, but I have no issues with doing that. It's service, and it's the bottom line. You know, I'm not in the service industry, but I'm still, you know, you gotta have a great attitude. You gotta be willing to do everything, you know, and clients recognize that. And I do sell a commodity. Every major bank on the street does what I do, but we differentiate our sales on service, and that goes back to lessons learned in Pax Christian, lessons learned here, and life lessons. But it's all about attitude and work ethic. Those are the two things. You can't. It's hard to determine someone's work ethic in an interview, but you can pick up somebody's attitude pretty easily. And then the work ethic comes from, what did I do in college? Oh, I just joined all these clubs. My parents paid for everything. No offense to the people who have that privilege. Or did I work? Did I wait tables, you know, and put myself through college? And, you know, those are the things that really, when I'm looking at your resumes, because it's hard to differentiate you from you and you on paper. You know, you both have the same GPA, you both joined the business club, you both did this, you both did that, but we're sitting there talking and you're like, you know, I worked at Chili's the whole time. I'm gonna give more weight to the person who worked at Chili's the whole time than the person who did it. I also look at athletics that same way, because, you know, you played athletics, didn't always give you time to work. Maybe you got a scholarship through that, but athletics teaches competitiveness and team, and so those are important qualities. Those are things I look for when I see when I'm looking at it, you know, undergraduate and MBA resumes and interviewing.
Like the underlying thing there, from either the student that worked at Chili's the whole time they're in school, or as a student athlete, what you're getting at is work ethic,
right?
I mean, that they balanced all of these things and still did a good job in their studies. And yeah, maybe they didn't have the 4.0, but they had a 3.8, and they did all these other things. And so that's a good kind of predictor of what kind of employee
Absolutely
that person will be.
Absolutely.
So I've got a question. I've got some of my colleagues from the USM Foundation and the audience, so they'll appreciate this question or this kind of lead in. You shared with us last night kind of how you got hooked into giving back to the university. And I think that's something really important for our students to start to think about, and not strictly from the standpoint of a financial contribution, but giving back through volunteering for the university, or recruiting, or a donation, whatever it might be. But the way you kind of started that was a really interesting way that it happened, and then what it turned into, because, you know, obviously Ton is here today giving back of his experience and time and wanting to be an inspiration for our students, but he has also endowed a scholarship, and he gives to the Alumni Association and things like that. But it wasn't always like that. That wasn't on your radar at first.
Yeah, so I'll be very honest. When I left here, I didn't envision ever coming back. Kind of, when I left Pax Christian, I didn't envision going back. Not that it wasn't great. It gave me an education, and it got me a job at the Fed. And it's kind of strange. I hadn't thought about the school until in the last 4 or 5 years, and maybe because I've got, you know, more of my career in the rearview mirror than in the front. But coming back here for the first time after 28 years, yesterday has really brought back some good memories that I just hadn't thought about. We were sitting and talking this morning, you know, about golf. I'd never played golf in my life. You know, I was viewed that as a rich person's sport, and it wasn't, and, you know, we weren't playing golf in my house. I got here, and I had work study every semester. I had to work, I had student debt, I had all this stuff. And my last semester, I decided, you know what? It's my last semester, let's try to do something fun or different. So at the time, they had a golf course, Van Hook. And I got a student job there, and I was out on the driving range collecting balls and washing them. And I did that, and through that process, I learned how to play golf. I got free lessons out there. I had access to golf clubs and things of that nature. And I'm not a good golfer today, but I've been able to play golf with clients. But it was just like I'd completely forgotten how I picked up golf, and it wasn't for Southern Miss and this golf thing. I would have never learned to play golf. And so there are little things that I'd completely forgotten about. And then I get to work, I get to JP Morgan, and I hired an MBA from Vanderbilt. He walked into my office, and I had a little Southern Miss football helmet on my credenza in the back of my office. And he turns to me, he's like, "You went to Southern Miss?" 10 years at the bank, no one had ever asked me anything about this little helmet. I'm like, "You know where Southern Miss is?" He goes, "Yeah, my dad went there." I'm like, "Holy shit." Like, "Yeah, he's the president of the foundation." "Your dad's the president of the foundation?" So fast forward a little bit, his dad is throwing a party in New Orleans for alumni, invites me, I go over there, and he's sitting there, and he hands me a membership to the Alumni Association. "Here's your card. I paid this year. You pay next year." Didn't think anything of it. Again, I was like, "Thanks, okay." I think it was $35 or something. But he had filled out the form, got me a card that says, "You're now a member of the Alumni Association." So then you start getting talent, and you read it. And then you get the renewal. I'm like, okay, 35, let's do it again. And then you keep getting the talent, and it keeps you a little plugged in, and I'm living life and going through whatever, and then again, $35, and then eventually I'm like, I'm just tired of like getting bugged to renew every year. And then I signed up for a life member, so I did not have to like send this $35 every year. That was, I don't know, 15 years ago probably. And I hadn't thought about the university other than reading the Talon. How often does the Talon come out?
3 times a year.
Other than 3 times a year, that's the only time I thought about USL. Reading the Talon. And then the guy I hired from Vanderbilt, his mother passed. We were in New Orleans, and we were talking about life, because you tend to start thinking about that when your parents pass or somebody passes that's close. And I said, you know what? I'm going to start getting involved in the school. I think it's time. I've hit a point in my career where I have a little time, and I may know something, I may not, I don't know, but I decided about 4 years ago that I was going to get involved. And then coincidentally, like 3 months later, Justin calls me, and he's, what is his role?
He's a development officer.
He's a development officer. He randomly calls me and says, "I'll be in Houston." And I'm like, okay. And I dodged him for a little while, to be honest. I did, And I'm like, yeah. And then I'm like, fine. And he came into my office, and he's sitting there, and we're talking, and I'll never forget this. And it was like, yeah, he's showing me the brochure and the endowment, and I'm like, I don't want to see all that. And then I just said, fine, I'll write you a check. And he looked like what? I'm like, yeah, I'll write you a check and we'll move down the road. And he goes, you want it now? And I think he was shocked, because I didn't think he was actually expecting me after 5 minutes to just say, I'll just write you a check. We'll go down the road. And the ball started moving. But I think the point is, the seed was planted 15, 18 years earlier by an innocuous, here's a membership card. Didn't raising kids, you're working, it's not top of mind, and then life happens, and next thing you know, you're in front of all you great students, you guys listening to my BS. So that's how it happened. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess I've got one last question on our kind of list of questions, and we'll open it up to Q&A. But you know, we've got a lot of students that are sitting here, and maybe they have a goal of being in a position like yours. So what would, if you could give them some advice of, you know, how to really make that happen? What do you think are the most important things they should focus on?
So, yeah, I'm an immigrant. I went to university not by choice, but just kind of happenstance. First time I ever flew on an airplane, other than when the military transport brought us to the States, was after I got my job at the bank. Never been on an airplane. Was probably socially inept, probably still am. Socially inept when I got to wherever I got. And it wasn't because my parents are lacking, it's just culturally wasn't what we are and who we were. So I think the most important thing was, you guys know where I stand on attitude and work ethic, is looking up and not being content with where you are, but willing to take a step to get to the next step. And sometimes that next step might be a step back to get you to the next step. But you've got to look up, and the first job, I guarantee you, your first job will not be your last job, but is it a stepping stone to the next job? And that's the important, that's everything. I think everything every move I made in my career is it going to get me to here, and the next one, and the next one, and wherever you might be today is not where you're going to be tomorrow, as long as you're actually looking for tomorrow. You need to have goals, medium term, long term goals. You know, oh, I just want to find a job. Okay, that's a goal, but once you get to the job, first day you're there, start looking at, like, okay, let me get the lay of the land and figure out what I want to be. Like the accounting majors. A lot of you go to a big firm, do that, and some of you guys, they like, well, let me get to the client. Let me go be a CFO of the client. And they didn't get there just by sitting there doing their job. They got there because they're like, ooh, I want to go work for a client, and they went and did it. So life requires planning, but it also requires just hard work and putting in the time and the hours. But you have to be doing it towards the end or a goal. And I got lucky along the way, but I also believe hard work and preparation prepared me for that luck. And you've got to find people who you can trust in your life. And mine started in this university with Dr. Sackley. He left a few years after I did. And then in my career, the lady Beverly, who moved me from finance to the business side. And then the president of the foundation, Ira Middleburg. My father died when I was 20 years old, so I didn't have a father figure. He became one for me, both on a business and a personal level. And it's not like I asked him to do that. We just developed a relationship. And most of my career has always been about relationship. The success of the business I run today is all about relationship, because there's this commercials. You know, I think the airline, when they go on, thank you for Southwest says, thank you for flying Southwest because we know you have choices. Well, this is the same way in life. You know, my clients have choices. They can bank with Wells Fargo, but they bank with me and my team because of relationships. You guys are forming relationships every day. You might form a relationship with someone that will last your entire life here. Definitely friendships in the room. And you know, I visited with somebody who I went to high school and college with, and JT happens to be best friends with her husband, and it just randomly connected. So life is just intertwined relationships, and you never know when they're going to come back together.
Thank you. So with that, we can open it up to questions from you guys in the audience. Blake?
Earlier on, you talked about one of the most rewarding things that you have right now in the position you hold is meeting those new people, building those new relationships. But getting to the point where you are in your company now, through every position, what was your driving factor? What drove you to work as hard as you did and excel in every job that you had? And I know work.
You want the truth or the politically correct answer?
I want the truth.
Money. I don't go to work. It should be bad, but I don't go to work because I love my job. I go to work because they pay me. I love my job, by the way, but they pay me, and that's why I go. I had a son when I was 22 years old, and so I was trying to put food on the table, provide, and build a life for him that I didn't have. So, I was trying to find the next role that would get me to the next pay level, and that was a big component of it. But what drove me was, I think, just an innate competitiveness, going back to playing sports and tennis, and going back to winning the Finance Faculty Award. I want to win that next year. At work, I want to get promoted, and I want to. So it's both. There was just a drive that says, I don't want to be in this role forever. I want the next job, and I want the next promotion and the next promotion. But along the way, obviously, there's money involved because, let's be clear, everybody, I would say everybody, most of you are in this room because you made already the smart choice to go get an education, and you believe that education is going to lead to a better life, a job that will provide money that will give you a better life. And I will honestly tell you, I had no idea. My idea of success, when I was 16 or 17 years old, I'm working in my mom's restaurant. There was this guy, he was probably in his mid-20s. He had a brand new Honda Prelude, and at the time that was a really hot car. It was yellow. He'd come in every week with some new girl he was dating, and I'm like, that guy's shit. And I want to be this guy. And he was a manager at the Chiquita Banana Factory, because at the time, 40% of all the bananas in the U.S. came through Gulfport. And so that was my idea of success. Brett asked me, did you envision your career? I envisioned being a manager at the Chiquita Banana Factory with a yellow Prelude and a new chick every week. But that was my only vision of success. That was the most successful person I had met in my life. And so, I think like a lot of kids, I had posters of cars, and I've dreamed about cars. And that desire, and being poor, growing up with nothing, just has driven me the entire time. And one, providing for family, but two, wanting things in life that I didn't have as a kid, and wanting things for my kids. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, the four of us. I shared a room with my sister my entire life. 2 of us and 4 of us in an apartment. We never had a house. I never had a bedroom, and these are things that stick out and that drove me, along with, here I am, everybody next to me has, degrees from, ridiculous schools across the country, and I'm gonna outwork you. I'm gonna beat you. In the environment of team is always important, but at the end, I was like, you're not gonna beat me. I think that was a long way of answering. There was many answers, but it's a life it's a life I didn't dream. I could never dreamed of, because I'd long passed the Honda Prelude phase, and now
It was a sweet car, though.
It was a sweet car. It was yellow too, and that guy, he was definitely cool. He had an apartment too, I think.
Were there any courses outside of this that you found really memorable?
That marketing class. So if you go back and I think about like what is actually applicable in life, if you're going into finance class, you've got to understand the time value of money, discounted cash flow, things of that nature, present values, terminal values, and all that stuff. If you're going into corporate finance and you want to be an investment banker of any type, you got to get that. The accounting, that's kind of belt and suspenders. If you want to be in banking, you've got to understand, you got to be able to read a balance sheet and an income statement and at least tell the difference. And then statistics. A lot of what we do is, I don't remember how to do all that stuff, but just analyzing numbers and data, statistics really helps. Those three things actually occur in life, maybe not in the formulas in the way that it's taught. Like algebra, who gives a shit? I don't even know what algebra is. Calculus, never took it, you know? I mean, there are things that in the business world that don't apply, but those three things kind of apply. Some of the things they make us take, I don't know why we take, because I don't know who uses it. Maybe other people use it in the banking world, but definitely statistics, economics to a little degree, but we hire a bunch of economists to kind of tell us what the economics are. So we don't have to actually be economists anymore. You can just read all the stuff we publish. So I was, I graduated at 22. I spent a year and a half at the Fed, and so I was 24. Yeah, 26 years. I was 24.
I was wondering how the pandemic has affected your job and how JP Morgan has had to adapt since the beginning of it.
Yeah. So the pandemic, it's kind of strange. The pandemic has really affected the lower economic belts of this country, like service industry, restaurants and bars, movie theaters. People in the service industry got extremely affected by COVID. The middle class and the upper class did really well. And that's the problem we have, is there's this massive dichotomy between those who got impacted by COVID. And like, my pay didn't go down during COVID. I actually saved money because we had to sit at home for a year. And COVID was uneventful other than the fact that I had to stay at home and couldn't fly and go visit clients. JP Morgan had a massive response to COVID. We had to facilitate the PPP programs for small businesses. So we had to get billions of dollars out the door to all these small businesses across the country that were clients of ours. So navigating the pandemic was definitely difficult. We did a pretty good job in certain respects, and we did really bad in others. I mean, the entire world, the entire US, in a matter of 2 weeks went home, the first week of March. You know, we didn't have technology. I'd never used Zoom. We had always had proprietary teleconferencing that you did from conference room to conference room, but we didn't Zoom. We never used Zoom, and it took them like 3 weeks to get us off that proprietary system and then onto Zoom. And then JP Morgan has 260,000 employees. 260,000 employees. A lot of them are branches, and so we had to keep sending them in because the world needs money. And if we didn't open our branches, that would be a massive, massive problem. But we sent everybody home in the US, and we went back into the office last July. We went all back into the office, and now we're back to normal, you know. And then Delta occurred, and then that kind of slowed everything down. Then we got back in the office, and Omicron, and yeah, it's very fluid, and it's hard to move an organization with 260,000 people. They they did well. We didn't do as well as some companies, and we did better than others.
Earlier you stated that once you left or graduated from Southern Miss, you never looked at that. And it's kind of up in the air once you get done with JP work. So my question is, once you do, like, finish with your career and look for something else to do, would you consider coming back finally after being gone for so many years to Southern Miss to like kind of help mold and work with the finance department?
Yeah, so I think that's kind of what I've started. I'm not gonna wait till I retire. I'd like to find more ways to help you guys specifically. So I do intend to. I don't know if I'll spend more time on campus, but I do intend to try to give back on a more specific level to individuals. And we've talked about, we hire in my area, the commercial bank, we hire a couple hundred undergrads every year, and we've historically recruited at certain schools. I've told Brett that I'd love to see and figure out how we can place some Eagles along the way. I think the pandemic and going virtual will help that process, but I want to do more now. I don't want to wait, and so yeah. Like I said, I don't know when I'll be back on campus, but I definitely will be a part of campus more so in the future.
Being an immigrant and being raised poor, having to work to pay for your school and stuff, how often do you see other people that have the same background as you in your work?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't see enough, because what happens is we've been very skewed to big schools, prestigious schools, name brands. Because those are the people running them. Again, it goes back to my comment about you hire in your own image. If you were raised in New York, you went to whatever, NYU, Harvard, you're gonna go hire a New Yorker who went to NYU and Harvard. So, and then that just propagates itself, right? And it just keeps, the chain never gets broken. When I do see a resume, I try to, my vote goes that way, and unfortunately, I don't work in a dictatorship, and we kind of take a consensus, and a lot of times the consensus always falls to the status quo. So my answer to you is not enough. I don't see enough people who have fought their way to where they are, and I'm going to try to fix that.
Can you talk a little bit more about how you had said, like things like they could get their attention by writing a really good cover letter, and how is that flattened out a little bit?
So the virtual world has changed the way we recruit. We typically, and I'll pick University of Texas as a school we go to a lot. We would go in, have a super day, interview 50 students, and have a super day 2. They bring them in, and we whittle down that way. And we always got our fill of the classes. What I've seen in the last 2 years is kids from non-traditional schools, and I picked Rhode Island because I think one of them went to the University of Rhode Island or something. Every job that I talk about is on JP Morgan's website. Every one of them. We have to post every job that we hire from. So a couple of these students stand out. They went out to our website. They found a job specifically in my area of the group. They wrote a very targeted cover letter saying, I want to work for you, I want to work in this group, I want to work in this business, blah, 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 blah. And they got an interview, and then they ultimately got the job. And so that's why I talk about how recruiting is changing. You guys you guys can apply for a job in Seattle, Washington. There's nothing, because the interview process is now virtual. In the past, if I'm hiring in Seattle, I didn't want to fly anybody in to interview, but now I can interview anywhere. So I think part of this is just broadening your scope. Let me ask you a question. You knew I was here. You knew I worked for JP Morgan. How many of you Googled me or JP Morgan? That's the first step. Go to the HR link. Look for analyst jobs. They're all over there. And then, you know, and that's where I can help. And that's where developing relationships, that's where your professors can help. Go to them and say, hey, I found on Coke's website this entry-level job. Well, who was here last year? Alfredo, right? This is what I'm talking about is there's some of it is on you. You have to go look. But the world is open to you because of virtual interviewing now. In the past, the world wasn't open to you because no one was going to fly anybody from Mississippi to apply for a job in Chicago. We were looking for people in Chicago. We just recruited University of Chicago. Like we were looking for people in Texas. We just went to UT. So I think you guys have the opportunity to broaden your scope if you actually do it and go look around.
Has there ever been a decision that you've made throughout your career that you wish you could change?
A lot of them. I'm still the same idiot who went to college and got a 2.5 for the first 2 years. Made a lot of bad decisions. So I don't know where to start with that. Other than I'm not. I'm by the grace of God and luck here, and I've made a lot of bad decisions along the way. I like to believe I made more good ones than bad ones, but I made a lot of bad ones.
You talked about always striving for a bigger and better job. Is there a job right now that you're striving to get?
That's a great question. So I report to a person who reports to a person who reports to Jamie Dimon. There are not that many jobs left in the pyramid. And these are jobs in the pyramid. So I've almost come to the conclusion that this is my last job at JP Morgan. Which, if I look at my career, there, and I think about in the pyramid, there are 250,000 people that probably wouldn't want my job, and there might be 250 jobs that are better than mine or higher. This is probably my last job. I mean, who knows, something might sneak up, but I've become a subject matter expert in what I do. So the bank, and we lend $26 billion, $25 billion. They need me in this seat because of the amount of risk. So there's a little bit of, they're comfortable with me where I'm at. They're not, it's no longer extending it. Maybe I've quit looking, I don't know. But I've developed a rhythm and a cadence that I'm happy with. My boss is in New York. He leaves me alone. Most Fridays I go fishing or play golf. I've gotten to a point where, I don't know if I need to take a bigger job to make X dollars more. I've done pretty well saving and planning, and I like my lifestyle because maybe I've quit reaching. I don't know. It's a great question, but if my career ended today, I'd be like super proud of what I've done. Yeah. And my mom thinks I'm the greatest bank teller ever, by the way.
We probably have time for one more question if anybody has one.
So Houston, Texas is obviously a lot different than Harrisburg, Mississippi, and a much bigger city. And just, typically when you meet other students at Southern, they're usually from a small town, from surrounding cities and states. So can you just talk about opportunities in bigger cities and taking that step? And, most of us are probably comfortable with being around here.
Yeah.
But, can you just talk about getting out
Well, when you finish here, there's not a lot of job opportunity, tremendous job opportunity in Hattiesburg. And I think you kind of got to go east or west. You got to go to New Orleans, you got to go to Texas, or you got to go to Atlanta. But I think it's important to get out of your comfort zone, because that's where the opportunity is. I mean, Houston is the 4th largest city in the U.S. It's, you know, there's 6 million people. There are tons of public companies. I like Houston, so I've been in nearly every city in America, and I've definitely been in the top 25 largest cities in America. Houston offers a southern feel with all the amenities of a large city. We have an arts program, we have sports pro teams, you know, the Rockets and the crappy Texans and all that. But I think if you can do well anywhere. You can do well in Yazoo, Mississippi, you know, or wherever you want to go. But you can move to Houston. You have a lot more opportunity. There are a lot more jobs. But you can also, if you want, live 40 minutes from downtown and have 3 acres and be just as rural as you are here. Texas has that ability, because you get outside the propers of Houston, it's nothing but sticks, and it looks very similar to here. It's flat, and it's just, you can find a piece of home there if you want, but I think you got to go push yourself. I'm definitely a fan of being uncomfortable. You know, I've been working on my golf swing, and my coach says this all the time. He goes, if what you're doing is not uncomfortable, you're not learning. So my golf swing is extremely uncomfortable right now. But I think the same thing could probably be applied to life. If you're not uncomfortable, you're probably not learning or pushing yourself.
Well, Thanhs, thank you very much for sharing
Thank
your
you.
experiences and your perspective with us this morning. If the audience would join me in thanking.
Thank you. Extremely honored to be here. You know, I wish I was in college again. Would have done it a little differently. But the world, it's all yours. You just got to go take it. Thank you.
And thank y'all for being here. You really turned out. It's
So
good
the
to
free
see
beers
you.
in the back, I think.